The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
John Wall would like to come back, but he's not coming back. 2 years, 2 full seasons after he last played in the NBA, he has announced that he is retiring and moving into an arena that when he came into the league, I didn't think was going to be possible for him. But if you listen to him now, he seems to be well-equipped to do that. And we'll get to that coming up. Big question as the Commanders take the practice field today. Yeah, Terry McLaurin's going to be there. He's off the physically unable to perform list. But will he perform in practice? And if he does not perform in practice, do they go back to finding him as a holdout, not a hold-in? Big questions as we are now at the 20th of August, and there is still no contract extension for Terry McLaurin, which is really, really bizarre in my mind. The way things are unfolding, it appears that McLaurin and his agent were banking on the goodwill that he had built up over his 6 seasons here, and they asked for an unrealistic number, a number that others around the league shake their head at and say, no, I don't think they can go to that level. And he may have overplayed his hand because the cards belong to Washington. The cards belong to the team. If he plays under his contract this year, which is like $22 million, and he has a great year, they franchise him. If he falls off, they let him walk. And either way, he's not going to have the security that he would have with a long-term deal that would pay him a more realistic number, $28, $29 million, which is what most people are expecting. That's per year. And how long that would be, how much guaranteed money there would be in there, all those things have to be worked out. But it's like the quietest kid in the class who did everything right, got straight A's, is finally saying, hey, whoa, what about me? You got to treat me right. In the old days, they would have. But with the salary cap and with the precedent-setting deal, as they got more guys that they will have to deal with in the future, none bigger than Jaden Daniels in 2 years, this is how business is done, and it's unfortunate. Now, as far as his status for today at practice, they would practice today and tomorrow, and I guess they'd have a walkthrough on Friday for that final exhibition game against Baltimore. They were due to practice against the Ravens, I think, tomorrow, and then have the little walkthrough on Friday, but the Ravens canceled that, so they're just working out on their own. But the status of McLaurin for those workouts, now that he's off the physically unable to perform list, not quite clear. And it's not quite clear that with this contract thing still hanging over them, will this affect how he practices? This was sort of a fuzzy answer that Dan Quinn gave over the weekend to this.
He said in the past that he wouldn't be on the field if there wasn't progress in his contract. Does this have any correlation to his contract stalemate?
No, I would say, from the medical side, contract, definitely separate. This is about his getting ready to play, which is, honestly awesome. And, it's just cool, to see him, getting closer, because now okay, steps are getting closer to return to being on the field. So he's worked hard, and just like the other guys have, they want to get back out there with the teammates and doing things. So I get that, but we just have a real process. We're not going to miss the steps and put them out there before guys are ready to do their thing in all the different locations. So that's where we're at.
With Terry, as far as the timing of him coming off PUP, was that a mutual decision with you guys, the team, and Terry?
Yeah, I think more often you just kind of follow the guidelines of how things are going, and then you're ready for the next step. And so he's really just putting into the same group of, although the other guys started training camp, they got injured, but now they're able to participate in the walkthroughs and that. So that's also part of the return to play of getting back with the guys where you can do that. The PUP is really focused on rehab. And then once you're leaving that, think of it all right, I'm shifting the focus from rehab into returning to play. And I think if you could differentiate those, for you and for the readers, that helps. Okay, there's a shift that's beginning to take place. Doesn't mean you're back practicing and doing all that just yet, but it does mean steps are going forward.
And the path he's on now, does that put him on pace if he continues to hit check marks to play Week 1 against the Giants?
Yeah, there's markers to hit, but it gives you a runway to be able to do that. And if you can continue to hit, the decels, the different ones for him, and all of those guys are in the same boat right now. And there'll be more, into Monday and Tuesday, and then a few days after that. So you just kind of, if you can reach that one, then I go for the next one, and I go for the next one. But if you don't go to this third one if you ain't hit number 2 yet.
Okay, so, they could still, kind of talk about the ankle. The ankle injury, to me, is dubious. We didn't hear anything about it at the end of the season. All of a sudden, he ends his holdout after 4 days of training camp, and he's got an ankle injury, which forces him on the PUP list. He's working out separate from the team. There was some frustration expressed at the end of last week by Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator. Dan Quinn had to tamp that down a little bit. It's getting to the point where something's got to give. Something has to give, and it will be very telling if he is eligible to practice today and decides not to. And could he be fined for that? Because they could. I mean, he's in camp. He's off the physically unable to perform list. I guess technically he would be a hold in, and they would say no fines, maybe just for the goodwill part of it. But nobody expected it to get this far, and it's almost reaching the point of ugly and troubling. And it reached that with Micah Parsons in Dallas. As Adam Schefter said, it looks like they're headed for a divorce. Although McLaurin has requested a trade, I don't think there's a realistic trade partner for them, because you're not going to give up a king's ransom for a receiver who's a really, really good, but not one of the top 5 elite guys, and going to be 30 years old in a couple of weeks, and is going to want a massive contract extension. So he may want out, but there's really no place for him to go. And the reality is he's going to be here one way or another. He's got a contract to play this year. I can't imagine he's going to sit out the season, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, once you get to the midway point of the year and you don't report, that contract would roll over for another year. So he would be under contract for the 2026 season at $22.5 million, with the possibility he could be franchised again and be 33 years old, and they could just say sayonara. So I would think that his camp is finally going to get a dose of reality and sign that deal in the $28 to $29 million a year range. But you never know. Pride can take you in a direction that no one would have expected. All right, John Wall yesterday announced his retirement. Now realize he has not played in an NBA game in 2.5 years. His last game was with the Clippers rather early in the 2022-23 season. So he played 34 games for them and has not been able to get back into the league. No real interest in him. He's now 35 years old. He's had a lot of injuries, and these days you don't have to have a news conference to announce these things. You just do it yourself on social media. So he put out on Instagram yesterday, this was Wall, "Today I'm stepping off the court but not stepping away from the game. Basketball will always be my life. New opportunities present themselves. I feel now is the time to walk confidently into the next chapter. Thank you for every cheer, every moment. Retired but never done. I'm doing it the Wall way." Very classy. And then later in the evening, he did an interview with Josh Rosenthal of Channel 5 and explained why the decision now.
Be honest, I just think perfect timing. I think perfect timing. I was ready for my next chapter. Sometimes it's basketball been in your life since a kid, and that's all you know. You kind of get into this spot where, like, what is next? You know what I mean? Like, you try to figure out what's next, what's going to be the next chapter, what's going on. I kind of got into the space of just the last 2 years of not playing, spending time with my kids, being involved in their sports, venturing off and trying to figure out what I want to do next when I feel like it's going to go great for me. I have a lot of energy left. I feel like I still had a lot left in the tank to play. But, sometimes that chapter is closed and you got to be willing to live with that. And today is kind of bittersweet and still some happiness because I have a lot of joy and I'm excited for what my next chapter is. And in this next opportunity, I just want to continue to grow, continue to try new things and figure out what's best for John Wall. And that's why I kind of feel like it was perfect timing.
Do you know what comes next? What you're looking to do?
Do I know what? You got to stay tuned. There's more. You got to stay tuned, man. There's more to the news to come. but it won't be too far away from the game. I can tell you that. I won't be too far away from the game, but it's something to stay tuned to. I'm very excited about it, and I think I can do something special in it. It all depends on, you know what I mean, the work ethic you put into it, kind of like you do with basketball. And that's how I'm kind of looking at it and taking that space of lock in, do the work, and continue to be yourself, be authentic, and I think you'll be in a great space.
Now, that thing he was coy about was a TV. He's going to be on the Prime Video studio show. Prime is taking over some of the stuff that TNT had. And, he is prepared now. If you listen to interviews from him as a rookie, now he's only 19 years old, but, even as he played into the league 4 or 5 years, he has become very, very eloquent, as you heard there, and I think he's going to be successful at this. He says that he studies a lot of basketball. He looks at even high school prospects. I wouldn't count him out. I think with his knowledge of the game, his sense of fun. Remember, he came in doing the Dougie, all that stuff. I think he's going to be successful at it, and this is a guy who clearly has come a long way. He has really worked on his delivery, doing interviews, things like that. So, that's going to be his next stop. He's already, and to his credit, he didn't just walk in there off the court, not like a Tony Romo situation where, he did succeed stepping off the field for the Cowboys and went right into the booth on CBS. But Jason Witten left the Cowboys and went to Monday Night Football and sucked. He was terrible. He was one and done. John Wall prepared for this. He was a commentator on G League broadcasts, and he appeared as an analyst on NBA TV. So he's prepared for this. As for his stay in Washington, it didn't end in Washington. He made 2 more stops in Houston and Los Angeles, never reaching the level that he reached in Washington as a 5-time All-Star. But he feels like this is the place that he will be remembered for sure. And actually said yesterday that he wished that he could have played in one city his whole career.
DC adopted me. They adopted me at a young age, and that's my second home. I wouldn't want to call nowhere else second home. That's the place I love. They took in a skinny kid from Raleigh, North Carolina, that was eating hamburgers, plain, with nothing on it, to now, to me, eating much healthier. Now I can enjoy my cheat days. I don't really have to worry about trying to eat healthy all the time. But I came in at 19 years old. No kids. Now I have a family and tattoos that I didn't have none of that before. Taught me how to be a professional in the league. Taught me how to be a great role model to kids, even better than what I thought I was coming into the league. Having me opportunity to grow as a player, grow as a father, grow as a sibling, grow as a community leader. I think all those things was great. I took so much learning from my coaches, my teammates, and you definitely got to give a lot of credit to the ownership. Without Taylor Leonsis, his family, and the ownership giving me an opportunity to draft in a skinny kid from Raleigh, North Carolina that went to Kentucky and basically give the franchise to me and see what I can do with it. And I think I gave everything I had 110% effort. I feel like I was a great leader. I was never scared. I took care of my teammates. I was athletic. I was a dog. I played on both ends of the floor. So I think DC embraced me and I embraced DC back. And I think that's why there's so much love there. And I can feel the love and the connections in my flowers today.
No question he played hard. And he played in a style which is, well, it's not really encouraged today because you're encouraged to shoot threes. And the fact of the matter is he was not a good shooter throughout his career. He was a scorer. And he had the ability to take the ball and go coast to coast faster than anybody else. But his shooting numbers, not good. A career 43% shooter, even with all those layups. And from three, he shot 32% and didn't even shoot that many threes. 5-time All-Star. And in terms of contract, he hit it right like Steven Strasburg. He got it at the right time. He's coming off his best year, 2016, 2017. He had his best numbers. He was all NBA, not just an all-star, but all NBA. And he hit the big shot to beat Boston. Unfortunately, it was in Game 6, and he stood on the table as if they had won the series and finally gotten to the conference finals. No, they lost in Game 7, and he was pretty much out of gas. And they were beaten by Boston, and the Celtics moved on. That was kind of the high point of his career, and the right time because he signed a 4-year, $170 million extension. After signing that, he played a total of 73 games for the Wizards in that deal. He was here for 3 more years. Tommy Shepard said something about that made him angry, and he wanted to be traded. So Shepard actually made a good deal. He shipped him off to Houston for Russell Westbrook, who played well here, and Wall actually sat out an entire season with Houston. They didn't want him to get hurt, so they'd have to pay off the rest of his contract. I think he took a pay cut to get another chance and sign with the Clippers, played 34 games with them, and then he was done. But the reality of his career was it was, 5-6 years, 6 really good years. And I guess the lasting image is of Irene Poland at the draft lottery, representing the team in that yellow blazer she was wearing. Remember, this is right after Ted Leonsis bought the team, and as a show of goodwill for the Poland family, she invited Abe's widow, Irene, to the draft lottery, and her mouth wide open when they got the number 1 pick. And Wall came here at a time of turmoil for this team, as Gilbert Arenas had brought the guns in the locker room the season before, had been suspended the rest of the year, had been under house arrest, and Ted Leonsis said something ridiculous like Gilbert was going to be a mentor to John Wall. They shipped Gilbert out of town. Wall became a very good player along with Bradley Beal, who came along, and he is remembered as somebody who was exciting to watch, just a thrill to watch on the court as he had lightning speed. But that started to dissipate when he had the injuries. He averaged 19 points, 9 assists, 4.3 rebounds. He is first in assists in franchise history and steals with 976, and fourth in scoring, just ahead of Wes Unseld, who was here for like 14 years. Just hit it at the right time for money. He made about $300 million, but like Strasburg, who got that $245 million deal and pitched 33 innings, Wall, after getting 4 years, $170 million, basically gave the Wizards nothing, and they shipped him off for Russell Westbrook for 1 year. So a tough player, good in the community, no issues off the court of any significance, and someone who was remembered as very exciting, and he I think will do well in television, and says that he wants his number 2 retired in the rafters, and I think it should be. He is one of those players who should be recognized for playing hard, playing well for a franchise that's been an absolute mess for the last, going back to when the last time they were in the finals, 1979. Very few high points during that time, some with Gilbert, some with Wall, but by and large, an embarrassment of a franchise that has been horrendous for the last 2 years. So hats off to John Wall. Enjoy the retirement, and look forward to watching him on Prime Video as he's part of their NBA package. Coming up, we'll get to a very interesting documentary, which I've not seen, but it's on Netflix. And yes, there's been a lot done about the Dallas Cowboys, but this is something new. A lot of Jerry, a lot of new stuff, and the producer of it talked to Dan Patrick about it yesterday. We'll get to that next. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
As if we haven't seen enough Dallas Cowboys documentaries, and I believe they've been on Hard Knocks at least 3 times, and it's basically been the Jerry Jones Show. Well, there's another documentary that has dropped on Netflix. It's called America's Team, which they coined themselves. I guess it was 1976 when Tex Schramm came up with that. Remember, they had the helmets, which I think they've worn since, with the red, white, and blue stripes across the top instead of just the blue and silver. They really milked that, pissed a lot of people off. But when they were America's Team, they were really good. Well, they're not really America's team anymore. They haven't made the conference championship games in 30 years, and the Commanders finally did that last year. But the interest in them is amazing, and the latest, the latest numbers that came out on their value was something like $12 billion. It's just amazing how much they are worth. And so the interest in them is always there, whether they win or lose. And so there's this documentary, which is produced by McLean Way, kind of an unusual first name. His name is McLean. He was a guest yesterday on the Dan Patrick Show, to discuss how this came about, and not surprisingly, got great cooperation from the owner.
Jerry was an open book. There were no questions that were off the table, and honestly, he was like incredibly supportive of the documentary and what we made. And when we showed him the documentary, he said that there were very painful reminders for him. So I think he liked parts of it. I think there were other parts that were a little tough for him to watch, but all in all, he's very supportive.
What era does this cover?
Yeah, this is mostly focused on like the early 90s. You know, I think episode 7 gets us about halfway through to what the Michael Irvin trial was, which was happened about 3 weeks after they won their 3rd Super Bowl. So it's mostly chronological and linear, but starts with Jerry striking oil and netting himself $100 million, going and buying the Dallas Cowboys from Bum Bright, firing Tom Landry and igniting an incredible amount of controversy. Brings in Jimmy Johnson, his friend from, when he was 17 years old. They win back-to-back Super Bowls, massive divorce between the two of them. Brings in Barry Switzer to win one more. And then we kind of quickly get into, kind of the downfall, the decline of this team on the field and this 30-year streak of not really being able to replicate that Super Bowl success.
What's the wildest story in the documentary?
There was a lot. I mean, I think that this documentary is like a big reason why we jumped on it is a bit of a murderer's row of talking heads. Like, yes, Jerry is a big and larger than life character. Jimmy is as well. You got Michael, Troy, Emmett, and then you got Dion. He comes in episode 5. So that was a huge reason why we obviously jumped at this. There were fun stories about the halftime, the first Super Bowl at Pasadena, because Michael Jackson played the halftime show. And so Michael Irvin and Charles Haley dipped out on Jimmy Johnson's halftime speech to go watch Michael Jackson do Thriller at the Rose Bowl. And so stuff like that was things that I didn't quite know about. But as these guys roll into these stories, all of a sudden they're telling you about how they go watch Michael Jackson. So stuff like that was always super fun.
Did Dion talk about going to a hotel room and walking in and seeing Michael in bed with a bunch of women? And Dion said, "Mike, I don't live this way," and walked out of the hotel room?
It's a story that sounds familiar. I don't think it was Deion Sanders. I heard that story from Michael, but it was Terrell Owens. And it was Terrell Owens that came into a hotel room, and it was right after Mike Tyson.
There might be a number of people who experienced that story.
It's true.
Just to be honest with you. It was Deion.
You have some options of people that you want to choose from, but I heard it was Mike Tyson after he got out of prison, and they all went into a limo and had a nice suite in Vegas, and Terrell Owens came in, and his eyes got as big as saucers, and apparently he said, I don't live this life. I can't do this. And so Mike and Mike scared away T.O., apparently, is the story that I was told.
We learn anything new about Jimmy Johnson's exit from the Cowboys?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the access to both Jerry and Jimmy was fundamental and crucial to why we wanted to make this documentary series. And I know that they've spoken at length, almost separately, about their relationship. And then when they have gotten together to chat about it, it's maybe like a short segment that they did on Fox. But for us, our opportunity was we got to sit down with Jimmy for a full day, I think 7 hours of interviews, and we filmed with him a couple more days. And then Jerry, we interviewed for about 40 hours. So for us, the opportunity to go deep with these guys was really what drew us to it. And obviously, I know that it's been covered for years, and I think that there is an element of this is true, which is their egos got too big. They had a massive credit argument, and they tried to claim more credit than the other one felt. And I certainly think that that's a part of their story. But for us, we tried to go a little bit deeper. For Jerry, I felt that what ultimately I ended up kind of feeling as I made this documentary series was this was a guy who had a transformative experience in college. It was the best moment of his life. He won the 1964 national championship at the University of Arkansas. Years later, he nets himself $100 million, and he does what maybe I would do or my friends would do if they won $100 million overnight. They go and they buy the Dallas Cowboys, and I think he did that in an attempt to kind of recapture a really big, beautiful, transformative part of his life in college. And he hires a guy that he's known since he's 17 years old. But Jimmy's point is like, Jerry, you hired me to do a job, and I need to go out and convince these players day in, day out to go sacrifice their body and their health so that we can win Lombardi trophies. And every Sunday they need to go out and do that. But the locker room, practice, these are my areas. And when you come in, you can be a distraction in that endeavor. When you bring ESPN cameras into the draft room, things like that, I think ultimately started just really rubbing these guys the wrong way. So they kind of almost had different schools of thought, I would say. And listen, there's still some things that these guys are never going to agree on. If you get them in the same room and ask them who deserves credit for the Herschel Walker trade, you're never going to get the same answer. They're just that's how they feel, and that's how they're always going to feel. But I do think that they still have a lot of actual respect and admiration that's grown for each other. They've always had that to a certain degree, and I think that that's beautiful. It's okay to disagree with people forever and still get along. Jerry and Jimmy teach us that.
That's Michael Way, not Michael. His name is McLean Way. McLean Way, who is the producer of the new documentary on Netflix about the Dallas Cowboys called, appropriately, America's Team. You did hear him say that Jerry Jones sat down for not 4 hours of interviews, but 40 hours of interviews. Is there another owner in the NFL who would sit for that long? Maybe. The Bob Kraft documentary or the Patriots documentary included a lot of Kraft, so maybe it was 40 hours. But that's a lot of time. Yeah, I mean, his business is owning the Dallas Cowboys. There is an off season. He loves the camera. But 40 hours of interviews with Jerry Jones for this documentary. Wow. This is part 2 of the conversation with McLean Way, producer of this doc. And this goes back 2 years ago, which turned out to be Dan Quinn's last game as the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator, the disastrous playoff game against the Green Bay Packers, which is a significant part of this documentary. Here's Dan Patrick with more on that.
There's a quote that's attributed to The Athletic, and it's the Cowboys' 2023 playoff loss to the Packers, where midway through the fourth quarter, it's 48-16. And Jerry, in the documentary, says this loss hurt us in every way more than anyone we've ever had. That's the worst loss in Jerry Jones's career?
That's what he said. And man, we were with that team a lot in 2023. And ultimately, I think if they would have had a deep playoff run, it probably would have been a larger part of the documentary series, kind of following the team on the road that year and filming them a lot. And listen, I was on the Cowboys hype train that year too, because they were kind of undefeated at home. They had won, I think, like 16 games at AT&T, and they were coming in to play Green Bay. And I think they were the favorite, and I was looking forward to that game. But watching Jerry watch that game, I mean, that family got shell shocked that game. There's no doubt. Jerry was quiet and intense as he was watching what felt like a very good chance for hopefully a playoff run kind of crumble in front of him. And there was no doubt. I mean, it was like after that game, we had been at Cowboys games after losses before. This one was different. Obviously, it's the end of the season, so it carries that weight. But it just felt like this family had been through a very terrible experience watching Green Bay put up the numbers that they did against the Cowboys. And no doubt, Jerry said this loss hurt. It hurt on so many different levels, is what he said. He said it hurt. It set us back. It was a financial pain. It was a lot that he was talking about that loss in many ways. So, yeah, I think it is the worst loss he ever experienced.
Does Jerry care too much?
It's interesting. I think that, again, I wasn't a fan, so I know the 30 years that it's been, conceptually, but I don't quite feel it as a fan. So I don't quite know what that pain feels like. But the one thing that sometimes I would read that I just personally disagreed with was like that Jerry doesn't want to win. It's like, all this family wants is one more Super Bowl for Jerry. Like, they really, like, my experience just being around them is like, yes, this is a tremendously successful franchise off field. They do the brand building. They do the people talking about the team incredibly, incredibly well. But at the end of the day, I think that they are starting to get that sense of urgency that, listen, and I think even Charlotte says this in the documentary, we don't have a lot of there's next seasons. Well, there's always next seasons because their dad is getting older and older. And I think more than anything, what this family wants for Jerry is one more Super Bowl. And I think Jerry certainly wants that too.
Being around him, knowing what's going on with Micah Parsons, your sense is what?
My sense is that Jerry is like very comfortable in these situations, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think for probably Cowboys fans, it's not a good thing, but I don't think that he sweats in these situations, which I think normally motivates most people to be like, all right, I got to go sign one of my star players to a long-term contract and lock him up early. And for some reason, Jerry doesn't quite feel that he even says it. He's like, I'm comfortable being uncomfortable. I'm comfortable with ambiguity, And so it was an interesting process to see him be like that. So I don't know why he necessarily does these things the way he does, or maybe there's more information. I don't know. Maybe there's things on Micah's team that they're not responding to or doing. I don't know enough about it. But I know that Jerry's very comfortable in these situations, which doesn't make me think that things are going to change necessarily.
That's McLean Way, his production of the Dallas Cowboys America's Team documentary has dropped on Netflix. I think it's 6 or 7 parts. I haven't watched any of it yet, but there's very little that I don't know about Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. I've been observing this since 1989 when he bought the team. And, for a guy who came out of the gate like he did, he had to fire Tom Landry. That was something that the previous owner volunteered to do, Bum Bright. Jerry said, no, that's my responsibility. I'm going to do it. He knew he was going to be vilified for that. He brings in his old college teammate, Jimmy Johnson, who had not been a coach in the pros. He'd been a college coach. And the team was terrible the first year. They were 1-15. They made a very smart move in trading Herschel Walker, got a bunch of draft picks for him, and that was the foundation of the team moving forward when they got guys like Emmitt Smith. They had drafted Troy Aikman that first year. That wasn't part of the Herschel Walker deal. But even he hedged on that they brought in the old Miami quarterback who had been with Jimmy there and had given up a first-round supplemental pick to do that. People forget that. But eventually things clicked, and by 1992, they had a team that would win the Super Bowl, win it the following year, and probably if this marriage between Jimmy and Jerry didn't break up, they would have won 5 or 6 Super Bowls. That's how deep and good that team was. And yes, the salary cap was coming in, but it was built on young players. They weren't paying guys a lot of money in those days, and they even played hardball with Emmitt Smith in the 1992 season when he sat out the first 2 games of the year, one of which they lost with the opener to Washington 35-16. Charles Haley threw his helmet in the locker room and it stuck in the wall. He was so angry about that. They finally brought Emmitt in and went on to blow out the Bills in the Super Bowl, and then they blew him out again in the following one. And then the Jimmy and Jerry parting happened in a bizarre way. Jerry was drinking at the bar, talking to sports writers, and he said 500 other guys could coach this team, back-to-back defending champs. And Jerry was asked about it the following morning when he had either sobered up or either had a good night's sleep, whatever it was. He didn't back away from it. He owned it, and it got to Jimmy, and that led to their parting. They didn't make the Super Bowl the following year, but there was so much talent left behind by Jimmy that with Barry Switzer, Coach Gunsmoke, that they won the Super Bowl again. But because Jimmy got all the credit for it, Jerry has been chasing that for all these years. And the one move that he's needed to make as the owner of the team is to fire general manager Jerry Jones, which he has never done. And Jerry will say, I'm general manager first and owner second. And that, at least not since the days of George Halas in the 1940s, has that worked. It just doesn't work that way in 2025. But we'll be interested to see what new nuggets we get in this documentary on Netflix about the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think that Greg McElroy is necessarily a hot take guy won national championship, maybe even two of them, quarterbacking at Alabama, had a kind of a brief career in the NFL and is now an analyst with ESPN. And he recently suggested that Nick Saban may not be done with coaching, that he may want back in. Saban yesterday at the Nick Saban Legacy Awards in Birmingham was asked about this, and McElroy cited, quote, a notable source in this in belief that Saban would coach again, and said on the McElroy and Kubelik in the morning show last month that he trusted the person who passed along the opinion. So the question of return was put to Nick Saban last night.
I don't know where that came from. Greg McElroy played quarterback for us, and if it had done something like that when he was a player, he'd have got his ass kicked.
He might have got his tuchus kicked, but did you hear a denial in that? I did not. He just said he didn't like what Greg McElroy said. Now, Saban is 73. He's been out of coaching for a full year. He's been very good on ESPN, says he enjoys that work, spending more time with his family, although I would say his family's grown. I don't know how much they need Nick now, but okay, he's got more time for them. He says there is no opportunity that I know of right now that would entice me to go back to coaching. That doesn't mean something couldn't happen tomorrow. Doesn't mean somebody who knows that he's interested might give him a call and say, how would you like to coach? He said last month in an interview with Fox, he says, I enjoy what I'm doing. I did it for 50 years. I loved it. I love the relationship with the players. I love the competition. But, it's another station of life right now. Well, one thing he might want to keep an eye on, and McElroy has an opinion on that too, is what his old buddy Bill Belichick is about to launch in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Now, Belichick has never been a college coach before. Saban was Belichick's defensive coordinator with the Cleveland Browns years ago. Of course, was head coach of the Miami Dolphins before he went to Alabama. So he's got experience in both college and pro. But, they're close. They're still close friends. They've done documentaries about the relationship between Belichick and Nick Saban. So I think Saban will be watching with interest this year and I think he's still 72. Belichick, just a year younger or about the same age, is about to get started in North Carolina. Now, this reporting that Pablo Torre has done on the girlfriend who seems to be controlling his life, and you've seen or heard the soundbite of that interview that Belichick did with CBS several months ago where she stepped in and she didn't like the questions. And, she's 24 years old and she seems to be in complete control of his life, which Pablo Torre says is going to lead to an over-under on Saban's stay at North Carolina for 1 year. He predicts it will be a disaster. McElroy, who's never played for Belichick but did play for Saban and probably knows a lot about Belichick through him, is actually, as he appeared yesterday on the Rich Eisen show, is actually thinking that this is going to work out great for Belichick at North Carolina.
It's going to be better than you realize. Like that, when you really look at their schedule, Rich, it's kind of amazing because we are all in the media. We're all looking for that next, hey, Coach Prime type of experience. Sure. Like we're something to kind of rally around, to have something that's polarizing. And then I'm starting to kind of dive into their personnel. The personnel will tell you nothing. There's too many new faces, too many new pieces. There's no telling what they're going to look like offensively or defensively. But then you look at the schedule, and amongst the Power 4 schedules in college football this year, it might be one of the most manageable. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's manageable with how it lays out. They have TCU on Labor Day night. That's Monday night. It's at home. That's one of their toughest games. They get through that one where they're a slight dog. TCU is going to be pretty good. They get through that one. They're going to be 4-0 coming off a bye with Clemson coming to them. They'll be a double-digit dog in that game, but at home, you never know. Throw your best punch, and we'll see what happens. After that Clemson game, let's say they lose it, they're 4-1. They will be favored in every game. Right now, all look-ahead lines, so it could adjust. They'll be favored in every game up until the final game of the season where they go on the road to NC State. So they beat TCU, they lose to Clemson. They could be 10-1 before they go on the road to Raleigh to play against the Wolfpack. And we know that if you're 10-1 or better, 10-2 or better, you're going to be in the playoff mix. I'm not suggesting that happens because there's too many questions about the personnel, but the schedule is really favorable. And if he beats the teams he's supposed to beat, they might find themselves in like the top 15.
And that might mean the playoff, right? I mean, depending on how things shake out. Bill Belichick gets North Carolina to the playoff, then you got to start thinking about him coming back to the NFL, don't you? I mean, if he proves it there, I just don't think it's going to work out. The girlfriend is a factor there. He seems to be in like a different state of mind than he's ever been before. And on top of that, something that he hasn't had to deal with. Again, he's never coached college. So the quarterback gets in a fight with his girlfriend, and he's not in the right state of mind. Wide receiver. There's other things that you're dealing with in 18 to 21-year-olds who are, well, they're not amateurs anymore, but it's a lot different than it is in the NFL where it's your job. And, you don't cut players. You don't trade players. You bench them for sure. You can do that. But I think that may be a look through rose-colored glasses from Greg McElroy as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to side with Pablo Torre in this. And this has got implosion, disaster written all over it. Now they've tried to get the girlfriend out of the picture as much as they can, but she's got access to all of his social media accounts. I mean, she's got big ambition, and she may be in love with this man who's old enough to be her grandfather. Okay, that may be real, but also she's got big ambition. You can tell that she's in this for her. And I think the collision of those two worlds in what has been a very controlling environment for Belichick over the years, the way he has always controlled things and has had grown men to work with, I think that the college level is going to be a very difficult thing for him to navigate. Coming up, Rod Woodson on how well the Ravens might play this year, plus Orioles preview at 10:30. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. I don't know whether you noticed this on ESPN, but when Sal Paolantonio, who's based in Philadelphia, does reports on the Eagles from their training facility, he refers to it as the NovaCare Center. Well, the Commanders now have a corporate name for their training facility. It's a little bit longer handle, and it's an odd one for an NFL team in that it has the same name as another NFL team. It's called BigBear.ai. AI. So artificial intelligence, Big Bear, they're coming in as a corporate sponsor. The future's moving along quickly. And will we get used to saying they are at the BigBear.ai Center? I don't know. Get used to anything. We called it FedEx Field for a long time. Now it's Northwest Stadium. We don't know what the name of the new stadium will be. I assume that they'll try to work in RFK at some point, but I know that they'll have a corporate name on it because there's money. There's money to be had. It was FedEx Field for a long time. Dan Snyder did very well with that first naming rights deal. Then when the ownership change happened, FedEx removed the name. No problem. They got themselves another name, Northwest Stadium, and now the training facility, BigBear.ai. Not I, but BigBear.ai. That is the name of the training facility. As for the Ravens kind of like Sisyphus. They have these great regular seasons, and sometimes it's in the past years, not last couple of years, but 3 years ago and 4 years ago, it was because Lamar Jackson was hurt. Now he's been healthy, and they're getting to AFC championship games and losing. What's it going to take to get over the hump? Rod Woodson, Hall of Fame safety, cornerback, won a Super Bowl with the Ravens in 2000, now a radio analyst on the Rich Eisen Show yesterday with what it's going to take for the Ravens in 2025.
Last year, I thought all the stars were in alignment with the Ravens because we won in 2000. Then Joe Flacco and Ray Rant, they won in 2012. And then it was 12 years later, it was 24. And I'm like, shit, it is destined for these guys to win. And they just couldn't get past Buffalo. But I think the three best teams in AFC by far are Kansas City, Baltimore, and Buffalo, and not in that order. I think obviously you're going to still give a lot of love to Kansas City. They got Patrick Mahomes. But I just think if you look at the Ravens roster, they're so solid across the board, offense, defense, special teams. You get Hopkins that come in to be that red zone guy, has a great catch radius. it's going to be interesting to see how they play out for these guys, because I mean, day one opening season, they're opening regular season, they're going to go play Buffalo, and the issue that they've had once the playoffs start. I'm not talking about the regular season. I think they're going to be fine during the regular season, but when the playoff gets here, Buffalo and Kansas City has been that thorn in their side that they have to get past.
Bingo, Rod. And even we could sit here and say, well, that's such a crucial game in week one because you don't want to go back to Buffalo. Certainly when this is going to be Buffalo's last run at it in Highmark, right, whatever, the old Rich Stadium. Like, you don't want to go there in January when it's freezing and the Bills fans are all like ready to finish this stadium up with a win and all that business. We could sit here and say that sort of thing, that you don't want to be on the road. But 2 years ago, they were the 1 seed and they had the AFC championship game in Baltimore for the first time in half a century, and the Chiefs still walked in there and came out with the win, because it all seems to, clearly the regular season matters. Clearly you can't just roll the footballs out. It is the National Football League. Right. But it always seems that something happens in January. Something happens. The ball pops loose. Zay Flowers looks like he's going in for a touchdown. Oh, ball comes out, for instance. Right. How do you coach again? How do you coach a team to not have that, right? It just seems like it's karma. Or I don't know what it is, but how do you? I don't want
to call it karma. I mean, I thought last year, because Lamar has not played his best games in those situations. But last year, Lamar even made the statement that he knew he was pushing and not having his best games in those situations, in those type of games. So I'm thinking, since he made the announcement, he knows it's happening to him, it's not going to happen. And again, he goes out, he throws a pick early, he gets a strip sack later in the game, about at the third quarter. Just one of those games that, I mean, he is so dynamic, and I don't want his legacy to be he's the best in-season, regular season quarterback, but once the playoff starts, they can't get to the Super Bowl, because he's the only two-time MVP in the National Football League that has not won a Super Bowl yet. So could it happen this year? Absolutely. I think they're stacked. I like them. I love Lamar, and I love how he has grown as a player and throwing the deep ball. We know how exciting he is when he runs with the football in the open field, so that's a given. But his precision of throwing the ball down the field has gotten better, and he's only in year 7, and that's the crazy part about it. He's still in his prime.
Yeah, he was in the best shape of his career too last year. I mean, without question, whatever the workout habits that you hear the whispers about from his first few years in the league, that's gone. And he looks great. Derrick Henry looks great. You look at this roster, and the Ravens are loaded, as you pointed out. But so I'll just take one last swing at this thing. Is what does it take? Because it's not John Harbaugh either. I mean, this is a guy who's on the way to a Hall of Fame, and it's not the front office. It's certainly not ownership. It's something like, how does one play your best when it's one and done and everybody knows you're good enough, but it hasn't been good enough over the last few years? How do we deal with this, Rod?
And I don't want to say they don't have leaders, because I think they do. Mm-hmm. But the times they've won the Super Bowls, I mean, Ray was that alpha guy in the locker room, on the sideline. And I think something like that has to happen somewhere along the line during these type of games. Somebody has to rally the troops. It can't be the coaches. It can't be the coaching staff. It can't be the head coach. It has to be the players that rally themselves on the sideline or talking to themselves on the sideline. And Lamar's not an outgoing, spoken person in a sense like that, right? But he is a leader. And for me, I think we need another guy on that offensive side to be more vocal, along with Lamar. Defensively, we know Rowe is there. Right. They got some players. We know Kyle Hamilton, even though he's young, people are going to listen to him because he is a player. Right. So they have the pieces to the puzzle on that defensive side. I just think they need another voice on the offensive side to go along with Lamar during the games.
Or maybe it's just Derrick Henry running it 25 times in the cold, and
I mean, it's
making people make business decisions. And let's get him a $150 in an AFC division or championship game, and good luck trying to stop that. Like that was the idea last year, right? That was the idea going in last year, and he was awesome.
But they didn't run as much as they would normally had done in the previous season and in the other playoff games prior.
Okay.
And it's going to be different this year because you got Derrick Henry, you got Justice Hill, who got a nice little contract, but Keaton Mitchell, if he comes back and looks like he did in the first preseason game, and he has that explosion that he had a year and a half ago, I don't know how you play all those guys. Now, I know Derrick Henry is going to be the bell cow. He's going to be the main guy, but then does Keaton Mitchell, is he coming in next?
Love that.
Keaton Mitchell,
can
he, I know Justice Hill, he was that third down back for him, but, I know Keaton Mitchell has to prove that he can protect Lamar on third downs to get his reps at third down. But it's going to be interesting to see how Todd Monken does this thing with those guys. Are they going to go old 21 personnel, which not a lot of people use that anymore? So you're seeing two backs back there, but you can see two backs where it's Derrick Henry and Keaton Mitchell or Justice Hill in the backfield, and the defense stays in their base. And now you can take that third down back at either Hill or Keaton Mitchell and motion them out of the backfield. Now he's matched up either with a linebacker or safety, and because they got to rotate down. They're going to be a man if they're rotating down, and now you can have your way with them. So it's going to be fun to watch how Todd Monken uses these guys and these weapons that he has, especially in the running back room.
That's Hall of Famer Rod Woodson, won a Super Bowl with the Ravens. Now they're radio analyst with the chances that they get over the hump and finally get to the Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson this year. They've been picked many years to do it. Have had teams capable of doing it, but when it comes to the championship game, they fall short, including a couple of years ago when they lost at home to the Kansas City Chiefs, who won their second straight Super Bowl that year. More NFL. This was part of the Green Light podcast, which is done by Howie Long's son, Chris Long, who also had a nice career in the NFL, not quite a Hall of Famer, but very, very good. And he has on contemporaries, guys he played with, guys he played against. And he had Jared Allen on the other day. Jared Allen inducted into the Hall of Fame a couple of weeks ago. And he is one of the great pass rushers of all time. And he had a relationship with Jack Youngblood to the point where Youngblood was his inductor in the Hall of Fame this past weekend. And what Youngblood did is what players respect the most. This was in the late 70s. He broke his leg during the season, not only continued to play, played in the Super Bowl with a broken leg, and on top of that, still recovering from it, played in the Pro Bowl the following week when they used to have the Pro Bowl after the Super Bowl. That is what players admire most, playing hurt. Jack Youngblood was part of the Super Bowl 30th anniversary team, as was my friend Joe Jacoby, who should be in the Hall of Fame and is not. And Jack Youngblood is. He said the person he was most excited to meet was Jack Youngblood because he played with a broken leg. That's what players respect. And on top of that, Youngblood was a great player, of course, with the Rams. But this is Allen on the Greenlight podcast with Chris Long discussing why it was so important for him to have Youngblood as his inductor and what the relationship has meant to him.
I truly played this game for the respect of my peers and the respect of those who played before me. The opinions of the people that played this game are the only thing that ever mattered to me. And so for a guy like that to pat you on the back, and I mean, you obviously have a much better relationship than I ever had with him, but I mean, that was worth more than the All-Pro I could ever have, honestly. It was it was such a cool moment, and I've had those moments with like Neil Smith, your dad, another one. You know, I mean, obviously he's in the media, so your dad is more in tune and talking. But a couple times early in my career when I got to spend a couple minutes with him and be a fan, right, and hear what he had to say. Like those were the moments throughout my career that I'll never forget. I wish I would have got to spend more time with Dolman. when he passed, him and I were just starting to kind of, building our relationship. But, having him there when I broke that 22, his single season sack record of 21 with the Vikings was massive, because those were those moments where you're appreciating each other's greatness, right? And it was humbling for me to see him there. And so I wish I got to spend more time with him. But yeah, those are the cool moments. And Jack Youngblood is one that really kicked it off for me. And, again, just he wasn't there this weekend or that weekend. But man, what an impact he had with very few words on my life and my how I view my career.
Well, when you used to play through something, and everybody plays through something, and which is what makes your career and Hall of Famers like you amazing, is the consistency to not get knocked down by whatever it is you were dealing with year to year. You always look back, and I used to think like, well, what would Jack Youngblood do? And it
Pop a couple aspirin, get his ass out there.
Yeah, he would.
I mean, that's why I played in the Super Bowl with a broken foot, and I was pissed.
Yeah.
I was trying to play in the NFC Championship game my last year, and Ron wasn't having it, right? And I was like, Ron, and no, with no offense to the kid we're bringing out of practice squad, but I'm like, 70% of me is better than him, And I'm like, so Ron was so pissed. So I went out there in pregame warmups because he'd already told everybody I wasn't going out there. Yeah. So I went out there in pregame warmup full on. I was doing ladder drills, sprinting, running, and then Glazer's over there texting like, "Hey, Jared Allen is pretty good on the field." Ron was like, "You need to sit your ass down." So that's just what I always felt. I'm like, if I can piece myself together, because I have a high, obviously most football players have a high pain threshold. But that's the confidence you got to have in yourself to be great. You got to think that if I give my team the best chance to win by being out there. Yeah. And you got to know those boundaries, right? You can't be out there with an arm falling off. But I mean, at the same time, no sure words are spoken. If I can walk, if I can run, tape that crap up, and we'll deal with it later. Yeah, and that's kind of the mindset I took about it.
And they pay for it later, but they do it. Playing with injuries is part of playing in the NFL. And, they say big difference between pain and injury. Well, sometimes you cross over that line as well, and you somehow gut it out like Jack Youngblood did. And I guess he's like the patron saint of these NFL players. So Jared Allen, who played with several teams. He played with the Vikings, did he play with Kansas City? I think played with Kansas City, and then finished up playing for Ron Rivera with Carolina. His last game, as a matter of fact, was that Super Bowl loss to Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos. Last thing from Allen, Jared Allen, and I've heard this from other Hall of Famers, including John Riggins. John Riggins said the biggest motivator for him was fear of failure. Fear of failure helped to make him a Hall of Fame football player on the field. Jared Allen, same thing. Fear of failure.
And the reason I chose fear because reverence didn't quite fit. Right? You know what I mean? Like, because it is a healthy fear. I think Garth Brooks mentioned one time, right? Like, courage isn't the absence of fear. I mean, it's the definition, right? But I think I heard it the first time from Garth Brooks. But
I was like, is this a Garth Brooks quote for like originally?
Yeah. No, I heard it for the first time from Garth Brooks.
Yeah.
I think obviously this is just the definition of what.
Yeah.
But it's like courage is basically isn't the absence of fear.
Yes.
It's doing what's right, or doing what you have to do in spite of fear. Like fear is that natural thing that keeps you alive, right? Yeah. But for me, that's why I say it's a healthy fear. It's that fear, like, I do not want to fail, right? I'm not afraid of failure because I'm going to learn from it. But at the same time, like you said, like, I do not want to fail. So I am going to prepare and do whatever I have to do to fail. And if I do fail, well, I'm sure as heck not going to let this be my story, because I care. I do respect what I'm doing. I do want people to respect the effort that I put in. So I'm going to learn from that, and I'm going to improve so I don't end up back here again. And so it's the same way. Like, nobody wanted to be that guy on film. You know that Monday morning.
Oh yeah.
Right? Nobody. I even after my third, fourth, fifth Pro Bowl, I was like, not me. I'll never forget it. I played my very first game in Minnesota. I went out there. Monday Night Football, right? I'm new contract, knew everything. I was jacked out of my mind, and I played like dog piss. I took a cut block to my freaking quad, first quarter was like, oh, this is miserable. I'm trying everything to get through it. And I graded out like -5, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote that on my wrist for the rest of my career. Like, never again. -5, never again.
Yeah.
And that's that battle with fear, right? Like, again, it's not a crippling fear. It's that fear, like you said, I never want to feel like this again. I never want to have this experience. I don't want to fail. So it is for me, it was that constantly, like I said earlier, I never allowed myself to sit there and enjoy the success I was having because I was constantly looking at what I was doing wrong and I had to fix because I was constantly trying to get better. My fear of ever being called a one-trick pony, right? I never, especially when I got my contract, it was like, okay, so you could be the guy who had a great year, gets paid, and then you're terrible, right? So what's your real motivation? And if it's greatness, right? And that fear of failure is what drove me. That fear of failure was that motivating factor to get up and be the first one in the gym, to be working out, to be training MMA, to be pushing yourself past the limits that most guys are in because I didn't want to fail. And so, I when people say like, oh, I fear nothing, that's a cop out. Then I would argue you're not pushing yourself hard enough.
Yeah.
If you're not fearing something, then you're living very comfortable.
Yep.
And I tell people all the time, the difference between greatness and me probably getting cut is a very thin line.
Yeah.
If I take an inside move and I miss that tackle 6 times out of 10, they're probably going to cut me.
Yeah.
But you build up confidence, you understand the game, when you can make an inside move, when you can do certain things. And so, that line of greatness is you got to teeter on it, and it's got to be like, okay, if I miss this, I'm getting my butt chewed.
Yeah.
If I miss it too many times, I'm gonna get cut. So there's a fear there too. But I'm trying to be great, so I gotta balance that, And so that was always a motivating factor. To me, it was what got me. Listen, okay, what else can I do? That was the back of my. What else can I do? And that's kind of what drove me. It's like you hear it in fighters too. Like, if anybody's been in a fist fight, most people aren't just super calm. Like, oh, okay. It's that adrenaline, it's that fear. Like, I don't want to get punched in the face a whole bunch of times, so I'm going to whoop you before you whoop me.
Oh, yeah. You don't want to be embarrassed.
Fear of failure. And that's what drives these. You think the quest for success. I'm trying to get to the mountaintop. No, it's a fear that you can't get there, so that's what drives you. Very interesting mindset. And that's Jared Allen, a great pass rusher during his time. And finally made the Hall of Fame I guess a couple of weeks ago. All right, coming up, we got Orioles preview. Orioles taking 2 in Boston. A flicker of hope. Not much hope, but a flicker. They're 8.5 games out of the wild card as they come home, and they're off today, rare Wednesday off. They're coming home to play the Houston Astros. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.